Um,
It's getting late.
cool. So here with Lawrence Coe, who's GM. Is that the appropriate
Yeah, I'm the
title?
general manager of Nexon M. And so Nexon M is the Western mobile publishing business group for Nexon Group. Nexon Group is a company that's been around for like 20 plus years. A company founded in Korea. I think someone would say it was a company that sort of started the whole free-to-play sort of game business model. And they're a company that's been sort of operating some of the biggest free-to-play games in the world. The list starts with like Dungeon and Fighter, Maple Story, some of these games that have been around for 10 plus years. And most recently, there's been this sort of conscious effort to sort of expand out our international presence. So Nexon M is sort of one of the business groups, which is primarily focused on mobile. And our sort of scope expands from North America all the way to Europe as well.
Cool. So I think one of the things I wanted to start off with is just talking about kind of the mobile market trends from your guys' perspective. What are you guys seeing from both the sort of west to east globally, and how are you guys kind of positioning yourself to sort of address those trends and challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I think for everyone in this room that are building mobile games and trying to launch mobile games, you guys are probably all seeing similar things where the industry has matured rapidly, not only just in terms of the user base and just sort of the spending habits, but also the developers' sort of capabilities in terms of running and operating a free-to-play mobile game. If you look at the top grossing charts, there hasn't been a big shakeup in the charts. And I think a lot of that speaks to like a lot of the developers just really understanding the importance of like live operations, figuring out a way to service their user base to retain and engage and to monetize. And I think because of that, now you're finding a situation where like the competitive nature of it has gone just significantly high. So if you're a new game maker, a mobile game maker trying to sort of break through, whereas maybe a few years ago you were competing against maybe a few folks that really understood how to sort of keep a game sustaining. Now like sort of that competitive field has gone just massive, expansive. And I think from my standpoint, that's been just really exciting to see just how quickly developers in the West have been able to sort of pick up, how to sort of develop a free-to-play game and then most importantly, operate a free-to-play game.
Cool. And so I know before this you were obviously working at Kabam, from the transition from Facebook to mobile. I mean, how is the experience for you different now? You're not doing your own in-house development. You're actually working with partner studios. How are you seeing the sort of pros and cons of that, and how have you set up your sort of team here in the U.S. to really support the Western studios to be successful and like provide that expertise? Because it's not just marketing.
Right.
You're not just like pushing traffic to games. You have engineers and everything in-house. Like, how have you guys sort of structured your team to make your partners successful?
Yeah, no, so Nexon in the West, I would say we were sort of relatively a little late to the party in terms of the mobile games business. We really started like making a big splash probably like 2 years ago or so. And by that point, there were already a lot of games that were sort of at scale, companies that are already operating at large scale. So our approach to trying to sort of make some noise in this marketplace has been let's identify and work with great game makers that are out there, and we knew that we could that there were great game makers sort of all around the world, not just in the Bay Area or in Seattle, but like just all around North America, U.S., Canada, but also all over Europe. And we were very fortunate where we as we sort of toured the globe, we were able to find some great sort of developers. And our thesis was let's partner with these folks that have ambitions of making something really fun, unique, and different, and then let's sort of beef that up with our marketing and live operations expertise. A lot of our sort of live operations expertise and best practices, coming from the teams over in Korea that have sort of built this up for the last 20 years. And then on the marketing side, basically being able to hire and build up a team from the ground up of folks that have experience scaling, games at massive scale in the West. So that's something that took a lot of work, but we've been able to sort of bring on folks that had tremendous amount of success at other sort of mobile gaming companies, whether it's like Zynga, Kabam, Pocket Gems, and we were able to sort of put those folks together to help our developers launch their products.
And when you're looking at different partners or different developers to partner with studios, like what are kind of the top 3 or whatever 3 to 5 things that you kind of are looking for? Obviously, like being able to support like the server side, like if a game grows to millions of users, like what are the kind of filters that you are focused on, and what are those sort of criteria?
Yeah. So a lot of the developers we meet, you know, we tend to meet a lot of developers sort of at the early stage. I think it just sort of naturally plays out that way, where you know it's usually some folks that worked at a larger company and they wanted to sort of go spin off and do their own thing because they had this great ambition and idea for how they think they can make a massively successful product. So at that point, you know, it really comes down to like, you know, the people behind it. What does a team composition look like? Do they have sort of expertise and capabilities in game design, creative, tech, and an understanding of how to sort of make a live free game work? So it's there, but you know, I think what we've seen in terms of you know, sort of dev teams that were really successful at the end of the day were folks that had similar philosophies in terms of us, where it really comes down to 3 things. You know, like being able to sort of develop and design a really fun core gameplay loop, and this is basically like the thing that like just constantly sort of makes you wanting to come back and play over and over again, and then also having the tech capabilities to keep that service up and running. I think anyone that has sort of launched a live online, you know, sort of connected experience, I think have probably experienced sort of the pains of like having the server outages and all that kind of stuff, and you know, whether you're scaling or when you're having a big event happen, but just having that like sort of that deep technical expertise. And then third, having a deep understanding of how to service the product. You know, I think that's the thing that which has been very, very impressive to see how like the industry has matured quite a bit in terms of a lot of developers recognizing how important that is to making a game sustain and be successful going forward. So I think like when we talk to a lot of developers, you know, we talk through a lot of game ideas, what their backgrounds are, but then ultimately we start talking about sort of philosophies of how we can maintain and sort of grow a successful outcome. And it usually comes down to those 3, you know, sort of shared philosophies. Like, do we have those in common or not?
And so obviously, I mean, Nexon overall is like 1,500. How many big is the company? Thousands of people? I don't even know.
There's a lot in Korea.
Okay.
I think it's like 3,000 plus
a
in
lot of
Korea
people
alone.
Yeah. So I guess is this general sort of thinking that you can service like the local sort of Western market better from like being local? Like, I guess what's the strategic reason for being physically located? You know, because you guys are what, like 50 people out of, you know, you're like a small fraction of the entire sort of entity.
Yep.
Is it like just understanding the Western market better, being in the Western market? What's sort of the strategic reason for being kind of in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think you know, there's a lot of like sort of like successful global companies out. You know, companies are operating at not just at the local scale but at the global scale. But you know, our thesis behind wanting to invest in a Western business unit was that, you know, we really believe that, you know, to be able to, you know, really optimize and maximize like the regional opportunities, that you wanted people that understood that market, you know, that marketplace, the consumer base, the player base, better than anyone else. So in our case, you know, we've hired folks, we built up a team of folks that have expertise in user acquisition in the Western markets, how to do brand marketing, PR, community management, and also sort of helping, you know, provide feedback to our developers in terms of like what kind of, you know, gameplay mechanics resonate well with Western gamers. And on the flip side, I mean, I think that's been, I think, also one of the reasons why, like, you know, so Western game makers have been sort of drawn to us, is because, you know, we built up a team that can help them be successful in the West, but also when we want to take their games over to, you know, Asia or Korea, for instance, you know, we have that expertise in Korea as well too. So one example being, you know, we worked with this team called Big Huge Games, a team based out of Baltimore, and we launched their first game called Dominations, April of last year. And so we were able to get, you know, editor's choice, a lot of love from Apple and Google. We were able to scale that game up, and I think at one point it was like a top 25 grossing game in the Western markets. So that's where like we were able to sort of just demonstrate our Western, you know, marketing and operations capabilities. But then once we decided that we wanted to take that game over to Asia, we had our Asian our friends over in Korea sort of carry the baton on at that point, and I think they drove it to like making it the top 3 downloaded game, top 10 grossing game, and I think that was like an awesome sort of outcome to see, just given that it was a game that was pretty much sort of built for Western audiences, but we were able to leverage the strength of our our Korea marketing operations team to really help scale that game up.
Yeah, because I think that's one thing that's really unique about your company is that basically when I talk about Nexon, to me it's one of the few companies that can truly like bring your game globally. Whereas like everyone's like, oh, I can global publisher, but then they sub-license. Like you actually have resources in Seoul who are doing operations in like Southeast Asia, Japan, and Korea, and etc. So can you talk a little about like the kind of resources that you have to support your partners' games like in that market? I mean, it's quite extensive in terms of the geographic.
It is pretty. I mean, there's pros and cons because it also creates like internal sort of like just communication challenges, coordination challenges. But again, the thesis being, we want, I think our belief is that to sort of maximize a game's potential in each specific sort of key market, we want to sort of folks that knew the marketplace better than anyone else. So that is basically by having folks that sort of know the local markets. So we have offices in Japan, China. We just recently announced that we set up an office in Thailand. We have a team up in Berlin that that is sort of being set up to support live game operations in Europe. And then we obviously have this team in the Bay Area that's primarily focused on all the North American markets.
Awesome. So I think one of the other interesting perspectives that we touched on, like just bringing up today, is so we're talking about you're here, you're bringing games to the West and to Asia, but obviously within the Korean market, you're one of the top companies. You're working with local companies there, and then actually bringing those games to the Western market. Can you talk about? We talked about Hit. What is Heroes of Incredible Tales?
Incredible Tales.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to talk about like that game, what you did to it to bring it here. I mean, I presented last year here on Korea, and my video trailer I showed was like that game, because I'm like, this is the games that are coming out. It's what is it, like 16 versus 16 real time, or like 8 versus 8 or something crazy. I mean, it looks like a PC game. So I'm just curious, like, what did you guys do to kind of bring that to the Western market? Like, how did you change the game? What did you do, and how did that work out?
Yeah, no, and so that one specific example, that was a game that launched in Korea late last year, and it was massively successful. I think it launched shortly before, or right around when G-Star happened in November, and it quickly sort of skyrocketed to become the #1 game in just Korea alone, which is a pretty fantastic accomplishment. And it was #1 for quite a bit. I think it sort of hovered on the top 3, and then sometime early this year, we were like, you know what, let's try to bring this over to the Western territories. Actually, just all global markets. And I think for folks that aren't familiar with that game, it's pretty much a hardcore action RPG game built in Unreal. So this is a game that is super dark fantasy. The client size is close to 2 gigs in initial client size. So it had all these attributes of stuff that you just look at, you're like, wow. We actually did a lot of consumer research to see if there's even a market opportunity in North America and Europe. And surprisingly, we found out that there was like this huge segment of folks that actually want to play action RPG games. There just hasn't been good at action RPG games, whether because I think it was like either like a poor port, PC to mobile port, or it was just done in a way where it just seemed like a sort of a secondary title to the type of experience you could get on a PC. But when people played this one, when we did the playtest, all the focus group results were just fantastic. They were like, wow, this thing actually definitely feels like a mobile optimized action RPG game. It's super high fidelity, high quality, and the things that you can do in this game I've never seen on mobile. And that kind of stuff gave us more confidence that we wanted to bring this over and also support it with a pretty large marketing budget. So we helped a lot on like sort of tweaking the marketing creatives. There are certain creatives that work well in Korea that we just knew that like it wouldn't work well in the North American markets, for instance. So we tweaked a lot of the creatives. We helped with the localization. Gave them a lot of feedback on the onboarding experience as well too. Like in Korea, action RPG, super common. Like, because there's so many, people just know how to sort of play those things. But in the West, we just knew that was like there was going to be a sort of a learning hurdle. So we also like sort of helped provide feedback on sort of tweaking the onboarding experience. And we launched it, and I would say it definitely exceeded our own internal expectations. I mean, because we also had some doubts about whether or not there was an audience for a game like this.
So did you adjust the download size or the
We didn't
technical?
So I mean that kind of stuff we couldn't adjust. And we actually did have internal conversations. It was like,
So it's still real time.
everything.
Is it 8 players or 16? What's
Eight,
the
yeah.
8? I mean, so you can still do that in the West and it
Yes.
works. And
I mean, one of the things we actually did discuss was, wow, this 2 gigabyte download size. There's no way we're gonna be able to do user acquisition against this thing.
yeah,
And so I remember the dev team sent us over a video clip footage of the actual game with using its actual production assets,
yeah,
and a sort of a slimmed down version of the game where they
Yeah.
just sort of stripped off a lot of the sort of the polygons and everything. And we looked at it, we were like, oh my goodness, that looks like a crappy
yeah,
port, basically. And we
Yeah.
don't want a crappy port. So we just brought it over. And, it's actually been pretty surprising how like if you have like just a really, differentiated, unique, high quality game, whether it's a 100 megabyte product or a 2 gigabyte client,
yeah.
you can still find ways to bring users on board at profitable levels. And
So
we've been
so
able to do
you
that.
are doing like marketing and
We
can
are.
make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think it's essentially you're obviously already made the game, so definitely a large opportunity out here. Interesting that you didn't change a lot. That's great. So in terms of like the opportunities that you guys are looking for right now in the West, obviously you talked about dominations from big huge games. You initially were just a publishing partner, and then you acquired the company. I know you guys do some like minority like investment stuff in some of your publishing partners. Like, what type of are those similar types of models that you're kind of looking for right now?
Yeah, I mean, we are pretty flexible. I mean, I think for every developer, they have sort of different things they're looking for. So we ultimately, we first sort of approach those conversations with, are we sort of like philosophically aligned in terms of what kind of games that the dev team wants to make, and also the type of games that we want to publish. So all the conversations usually start there, and then after that, it goes into like what kind of sort of deal structure makes sense for the dev studio, sort of their personal ambitions, and also like what we think is going to be a good sort of outcome for us as well too. In the case of big huge games that started off, I think I wasn't there, but I think from what I understand, it started off as literally a one Word document pitch, and it was so fascinating that we decided to make a minority equity investment, and also make a publishing deal. And we worked on Dominations together, launching that in the West and in Asia. Really got to know the team really well. They liked us, we liked them. And earlier this year, we were like, you know what? It seems like we both like each other. Why don't we just really try to go after something even bigger by bringing you into the Nexon family. And they've come on board, and we've still been able to sort of keep their big huge games and Baltimore culture intact. And yeah, we've been seeing continued success with Dominations, and we're looking forward to working on some more products going forward with them.
And can you talk about kind of some of the stuff coming out in the near future? Is there anything? And I've got the sense that you guys are diversifying, like outside of traditional, maybe like mid-core, core genres, to maybe other sort of more mass market areas. Like, how are you guys looking in terms of the content that's been announced that's coming out in the next, 3 to 9 months?
Yeah, so I think there's been some announcements recently, like some games that will be coming out that are being built out of our Korea studios. And so, there's a lot of RPG games coming out from that, from those studios over there. And then just recently on the Western markets, we have this partnership with Respawn/Particle City. So Particle City is a new mobile development studio that both Respawn and Nexon, co-invested in to put together to build mobile games based on the Titanfall franchise. So that's something that we're really, really looking forward to for next year.
And that's a card,
Yeah, so
collectible card.
It's a 2-game deal. We have a card game and a new unannounced game, which
Okay.
you'll hear more details about, which we're really, really excited about based on sort of internal play tests so far. But in terms of the type of games we're looking for, we actually really haven't sort of set our strategy to let's go deep on RPG or strategy. It's, I think, if you came across the right puzzle game opportunity, slot game opportunity, I think, we'd all take that all seriously. But I think, again, sort of the main thing being, we look at games as, does this have a potential of becoming something that can sort of last, not just for months, but something that we can operate in service and keep, players engaged for years. Just because internally there's just been this super high bar that's been set where, like I mentioned earlier, we have games that's been running 10 plus years now.
Yeah.
We know that not every game can sort of achieve those type of levels, but that's sort of the type of ambition that we have, and that sort of every sort of game that we launch, we're hoping that it can be a game that can be serviced and operated for that long.
Awesome. Cool. I think we're out of time here. So any questions for Lawrence about what they're up to, the market in general, from the audience? Anyone? No? All right, cool. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.